The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I'm Rachel Alley. I'm Program Director for Youth Ministries for the ELCA. And thank you for coming today. We're going to turn all of your microphones on in just a second. It looks like there's 12 of us. If we get over 15 folks, we probably will turn the microphones off. This is brand new to the Youth Ministry, ELCA Youth Ministry Network, and to us in regards to doing a book club. So we're trying this out to see how it works today. We are going to be covering the first two chapters of the book, Growing Young. If you've got it, have it nearby. And just a couple of ground rules for our conversation today with GoToWebinar. This is my first time using it too as well. We've got Todd Bugler, who's the director of Youth Ministry Network, in the background, and he's going to be helping out with sound. We're not going to show anybody's webcam, and in fact, in just a minute, I'm going to disappear too as well. If you've got a question, if we turn microphones off, if you've got a question, if you go down to attendees, you can put your hand up. There's a little hand. If you can put your hand up and ask a question, and we will turn on your microphone so that you can, so that everybody can hear. Also, guys, this is going to be an interactive conversation today. So I've got lots of questions for you. So get used to using that hand and being ready to answer some questions. So Todd, if you're ready, we'll get started. I'll switch off my webcam and put up a PowerPoint.
I was going to try to scare you off.
All right. So today we're going to be studying or beginning our study on growing young. It was a long study by Fuller. Fuller is a seminary out in California. They have been, they are known for doing excellent youth work. A number of years ago, you might remember the book that they wrote, Sticky Faith. And the language of religious nuns also was came from them in some of their research. And so, but today is going to be a good day. Today, we're going to be talking about some hopeful things in congregations. When they did a study across the ELCA, or across the denominations in the United States with 500 congregations, they discovered 6 strategies where congregations were growing young. And so that's what we're going to be discussing these 4 sessions together. And it's hopeful, good news, and especially in these trying times today, we need some good news. I also want to let you know that this is...
Say, Rachel, just so you know, this is Todd, by the way. Hi. Hey, I did go in and remute the microphones because there was a lot of background noise, people talking in the background and such, which was making it difficult to hear. So the microphones have been muted. So again, if people have a particular, want to comment or something, to press that little hand button, like you're raising your hand, and then Rachel will let me know, and we'll unmute the microphone at that time. I think that'd probably be the best way to go, because we're really having a hard time hearing you, Rachel, over some of the background noise.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So I do want to let you know, too, that the Domestic Mission Unit, which is the unit that covers just about everything that has to do with congregations in the ELCA. It's your faith formation team, youth ministry, it's congregational vitality, it's candidacy, it's stewardship, it's hunger, it's, you name it, we're part of advocacy, you name it, we're part of this large domestic mission unit. One of the new strategies of that unit is growing younger. It's using this book in helping our congregations become not only growing younger, but also growing more vital in the communities that they live. This is one of a couple. And in our coming weeks, I'll share some of those other strategies with you as well, just so you know what we're going in the direction of domestic mission in your church is going as well. So did you know that 40 to 50% of your youth group seniors drift away from God and their faith community after they graduate? Think about the kids in your youth group right now. In fact, why don't you put them up on the altar right now, all of your seniors. Have them picture them in your head. And then put a big X over half of them. Research is showing that half of our youth group seniors are going to drift away from God after they graduate from college. To me, this is just stunning, considering the amount of work and what we do to develop these young people. In fact, it's kind of scary. Does anybody have any comments about that? If so, raise your hand and we'll open up your microphone. Okay, so Todd, seeing no hands there, because this is a critical time in the life of the church, you have a vital role in this to play, to make a change, to make a difference. And so that's the reason for Growing Young, and that's the reason I hope that you're on this in this conversation today. So research from Fuller shared in the book that there are 10 qualities that a church doesn't need. A lot of times we get stuck in, well, we need this and we need that. So I often hear, well, there's not enough people, or our building is just not cool enough. We don't have a rock climbing wall. We need to be a mission church, and then we'll grow more because we're such an older congregation and we're set in our ways. Sometimes I hear the excuse of, well, if we're going to take away the name Lutheran and look more like a non-denominational church, and maybe that will attract more people. Or the hip quotient. You don't have to have that like cute, handsome, young leader up front. A mature person can make a great leader as well. You don't have to have a big budget or a big modern building. You don't have to have a contemporary worship service. And this one's really important to me. You don't have to water down Jesus's message or your teaching style. And then finally, you don't have to have all the bells and whistles for your entertainment. Just excellent worship, but it doesn't have to be hyper entertaining. And especially with our youth and our young people, they know where to go for entertainment. They are definitely not looking for that. They're looking for something real and relevant in our congregations today. Okay, so now this time you really have to speak up. Share a time when you were connected to a church, ideally when you were in the age of 15 to 29. Todd, I wonder if we need to explain the hands. Oh, Sherry, there we go.
So my experience is a little bit different than most people's. I was not in a youth group at a church, but in my early 20s, I was very much involved with a campus ministry in Pittsburgh. And yeah, being a campus ministry, everybody was a young adult. And so we did feel valued and empowered and everything that our young adults want to feel.
What did you think that, why do you think it was because it was all young adults? What was your leader like then?
We had an elderly pastor. I'm saying that because I was 20 at the time. He was probably in his 50s. Think like Friar Tuck, but also very, very warm and genuine in his relationships with us. You know, always ready and willing to drop whatever he was doing if we stopped by the campus ministry house. So, you know, we were definitely in the forefront.
Oh, great. Thank you. Does anybody else have something to share?
Charlene just popped a question in. I'm not sure if, Charlene, if you'd be willing to, I'm going to delete, or I'm not delete, I'm going to open up your microphone and see if you'd be willing to share that piece verbally. That would be great. Charlene, you're muted on your end, so if you want to unmute your mic, you could share that with us, or if you'd rather, I could just ask the question out loud. Oh, there she is. Go ahead, Charlene. Hello, Charlene, are you there? Your mic is unmuted, but I'm not hearing you, and maybe that's just me. But what she wrote in the question mark, she said, is when I was a youth in Lancaster, they let us run our groups, and when I was in college, they asked me to help with the youth group. So it sounds like it had to do with leadership, opportunities to lead.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, I'm going to turn you on. Well.
Okay. Is that me?
Yes, yay.
When I was in high school, and this was way back, ancient history, back in my Missouri Synod days in the 70s, we went to a conference. It was called a Caretakers Conference. It was in Kansas City, and it was for the whole western half of Missouri. And I went with, I can't even remember who was there, except I know Mr. Gabler was there, who was an adult in our congregation. And after we went to this conference, which looked at areas, agencies, and things that were serving needs in the Kansas City community, we came back to St. Louis, and then I was invited to help plan a similar event for St. Louis for the whole eastern half of Missouri for congregations. And that being invited into leadership alongside adults made me really feel valued.
Yes. Yep. Yep. When I was personally, I think I was like 12 years old, I was playing the piano and I was asked to, I think this was at the very beginning of my start of working with children and youth. In fact, someone asked me to play for the children's choir. And really and truly, all I needed to do was just play the notes just on one hand, basically. I wasn't great at it, but that's how it all got started. And I worked with another mentor at church. But I was young, was really young when I started that. Will anybody else share a time when you felt truly connected to your church?
Valerie posted a piece. I'm going to turn her microphone on. Go ahead, Valerie.
Hi, yeah. I wasn't too sure if the hand thing was working properly. I didn't go to church as a child or a youth, but joined the campus ministry on the University of Illinois campus when I was, I don't know, 21, 22. And that is maybe a slightly unique campus ministry. It is a standalone congregation. So it was young adult led. And I joined just before the ELCA became the ELCA. A younger pastor who had a family. It was mixed though, because there were older adults who maybe were connected to the university. So it wasn't all young adults from the campus, but it was a place to take leadership if you wanted it, and to ask questions, and really welcoming and open, and watching what they're doing from afar via their Facebook posts. They're a pretty vibrant community.
Wow, that's great. Still today, because they've got young adults involved. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They're very active. They're doing a lot of really neat things on campus.
That's great. Anyone else willing to share a time when you felt connected to a church? If not, we'll move on. Todd, it looks like since there's maybe 17, could we just open up everybody's mic? What do you think?
We can give that a try and see. It depends a little how much background noise is. That's why we shut it down before. But let's open it up and see it. I'll open the mics, and some folks have them muted on their end, and so I can't change that. But you can control it yourself as well. So.
Okay.
On the reading. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I did hear some background.
Yeah. I'm going to remute if that's okay.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry about
that. And I was trying to figure out how to do this. Okay, so the Fuller and Jake and Kara, who wrote Growing Young, discovered in their study of congregations that there were 6 core commitments that congregations had that helped their ministries and their congregations be not only younger, but also more vital. And during our time together, we're going to be talking about all of these. Today, we're going to spend some time on keychain leadership. But you'll notice this circle. You don't, and our book is about these commitments. You can start anywhere with the commitments. The other thing about the Growing Young material is some of the questions that I'm asking today comes from the church discussion guide, which is on the Fuller website or the Growing Young website, which you have access to, and you can download in a PDF and lead a book discussion yourself with some of your own leaders in your congregation, or maybe even start with a smaller team or with your pastors and staff. But I believe one of the most important ones is keychain leadership. Maybe that's because that was the first one in the book. So this is my question for you. My next question for you, how are the terms in your current context, young and old, used and viewed in your church? Is it negatively? Is it positively? And let me give you an example. When I was in my early 20s, I had just joined Apostles Lutheran Church. I was asked to teach the high school Sunday school class, and my husband to help. And the reason is because we were young. I'm not quite sure I was qualified at that point, but I was closer to the kids' age. So in some ways, I look back and I go, I think that was a positive reinforcement because I was young. But then in my heart of hearts, I was really nervous because I felt like They were choosing me because I was young, maybe not because I was knowledgeable. How about you? How are the terms in your congregation, young and old, used? And please share. Just raise your hand and we'll click on your mic.
Valerie has her hand up. I will
Okay.
unmute her mic. Go ahead, Valerie.
No, I don't think I do.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
well, it's great to hear from you anyway. Felicity, your hand is up. Go ahead.
So looking at how the terms young and old, I was kind of thinking of what Rachel said, and I'm at this weird age in my mid 30s where I'm not a young adult anymore, but I'm not as wise as our wiser members, and so it kind of goes negative and positive. It's positive that I can be considered young enough to still be cool and relevant, and do the Sunday school fun stuff. But at the same time, on the negative side, I am not as wise as our wiser members. And so I'm not quite yet invited into those circles.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that that was really the answer to the question, but there's the whole middle age chunk.
Yeah, there really is. Yeah. 2 weeks ago, too, one of our youth core leadership team, we've got a new member of the adult team who is younger than I am, and I asked one of our youth on the team, I'm like, well, what did you think about our new adult? And Nathan says, he's great. He's so young. And I was like, oh, that kind of hurts. So, and it is kind of hurtful sometimes. When our young people might say that an older member is too old, or likewise, sometimes especially when it comes to leadership, that our older leaders don't think the young people are ready. Any other thoughts? Sherry?
Yeah, in our church, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of young and young adults, youth and young adults, but we do tend to include them. But but we have a very young pastor, and so he just turned 29, and and which I think is great. But then there are people that assume that the young people know everything there is to know about computers, or there's all these assumptions made. We do tend to, our congregation will get past them. Like, we have one of our youth is a co-president of our council right now, and obviously there are some legal ramifications to that, but it's a good way of at least letting them experience and work together with a council president. But yeah, it's when I do things, and you have to be careful of terms like families, because families aren't necessarily mom, dad, and 2 kids. When I put like take home Lenten devotions, I use the term households instead of families, because I'm trying not to delineate, that just because you're older, you're not a family anymore,
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for the comments. So the second chapter of our book is keychain leadership. And keychain leadership is sharing the power with the right people at the right time, especially young people. And in the book, they gave a story about stretch. I also like to think about this when you're learning how to drive. You don't do it alone. You first have to study a little bit and learn the rules of the road and take a test. And then for a year or more, depending upon the state, you're driving with someone else and being coached by someone else. Sometimes it's your parent, sometimes it's an older brother or sister, sometimes it's a grandparent, sometimes it's a driver's ed teacher, correct? And then some states too, even after you get your driver's license, you turn your legal age and you get your driver's license, there's still rules along the way for a couple of years that you can't drive alone. You still need a little bit of help. And then finally, you give the keys away. I can remember the first day my dad gave me the keys to the car and let me drive. And it was a big old Chevrolet Caprice Classic Silver. And I drove it where I probably shouldn't have and got stuck in a ditch for the very first time. But you know what? That was a really good exam. That was a good, it was on a rainy day and it was a muddy road and I was not where I was supposed to be. It was a really good lesson for me to learn that day, but it was also a momentful day in my life because Dad finally gave the keys away to me. In the book, the book also talks about types of leaders. And so there are the keyless leaders, and they are the ones that don't ever want to give keys away. They're the ones that are younger and don't even realize that they might even have keys. Or maybe they're brand new to the congregation. There's the key hoarders, and they're the ones that don't ever want to give the keys away, whether it's to the sacristy or sometimes the ladies in the kitchen. Our key hoarders, sometimes the pastor is in making the big decisions. There are key loaners. I have to admit, I'm going to ask you in just a second what kind of key leader you are. I tend to be a key loaner. Sometimes I like to give it away, but sometimes I take it back. I probably shouldn't, but I feel like things, I'm just being honest there. But the key loaner is that one that gives keys away, but then sometimes takes it back. And then finally, the key chain leader, we're going to spend a lot more time on that, is the leader that gives the keys away, but also checks on the persons that they've given the keys away and make sure they're being successful. And they're always being visionary and looking forward and looking always for more leaders to give responsibilities away to. So what type of leader are you guys? Let's see. Valerie, is your name? I'm gonna turn you on. There you go.
Yeah, I think there's a lag on the hand because I've got it as down, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. I would say it depends. I'm not in a leadership position at this point. I'm more strictly volunteer in a new congregation. But when I had a bigger leadership role, it depended between a loner or one who could give some keys away depending on who was taking them and checking on the individual and answering questions. What I found in my previous congregation, the leaders don't know how to do the key sharing. Not that they don't want people to help, more not knowing how to transfer some of that. And if there are things that need to be learned, how to do that.
Yeah.
What happens more typically is, especially when there's the change of council, it's like, okay, here are the keys. You're on your own, figure it out, you know? So we need to train leaders to be different kinds of leaders instead of, okay, well, this is my job, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, yeah, and the more you give, when leaders give work away, it makes their load a little bit lighter, but it also helps the congregation be more creative and more vital because more people are involved. Yeah, you're exactly you're right on the money there. Anyone else?
It's not just giving the work away, you know, is it, okay, checking in with people. Are you okay with this? Do you need help? Can I answer any questions? Not to micromanage, but not to just send them out and leave them hanging.
Yes. Yep.
Rachel,
anybody else?
Yeah, there's a few other hands up, but Joel is on the phone listening, so he's not able to speak. So he typed his question into the question piece. He said,
okay.
I'm not on the computer, I'm on my phone. I'm not sure if my audio works, so feel free to read this. He said, I find myself more often in the camp of key loaning or key hoarding. Culture in our congregation and leadership used to be more key hoarding, but we're working toward key loaning and key chain. He goes on to say, so much of it in the past was centered around an image of perfectionism. One of the new mantras in our leadership is, if there's someone who can do your work 70% as good as you can, you should let them do it.
Mm.
Which is great. And then there's a couple other, Sherry has her hand up. And Sherry, your microphone is muted on your end. So if you want to unmute that, you could, Sherry Bingaman, you could, there you go. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't think I had my hand up, but that's okay. I'm in a similar position to Valerie. I was staff at a church for several years, and I think in the beginning, it was hard for me to give the keys away, but after a while I found out that sometimes it was easier. And that I didn't have to do it all myself. And in my new congregation, there are still times like when, okay, I'm doing this and I'm just going to do it myself. But there are other times when we just had a pancake dinner, and it was the first time we had that, and I had organized it, and I walked in, and people walked in the kitchen and they just took over. And it was great. I had done all the shopping and did all the organizing, but they walked in, and I kind of told them what my plan was for getting the meal ready, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to do it this way." And so they kind of took the keys from me, but it was really good, and it was probably a better plan than what I had.
Yeah. So you definitely are a keychain leader then. I see Andrew's. Andrew, I just turned your mic on.
Yeah, I find my style depends on the specific task that I'm doing, and also, honestly, it depends on the people that I'm working with. Part of it depends on trust, kind of like a parent with their kid and the keys. In certain situations, I tend to hold onto the keys more tightly, and in other situations, I tend to be more free with those and share those. And a lot of that just depends on the person or the situation and what it calls for. So I try to be a keychain leader as much as possible, but I also know that there are times where that may not be the best strategy at that moment.
Sure, sure.
And Deborah's got her hand up as well.
Yeah.
Deborah Group.
Hi. Yeah, I feel like I have grown from being more of early on a key hoarder to then becoming a key loaner. I had a parent years ago who I had recruited to volunteer to set up an activity with middle schoolers. And then I was giving her advice and saying, you might try this or this. And she said, if you want me to do it, then you need to stay out of it. And it was a big lesson for me that if you're going to give that key away, then you have to trust that the person that you're giving it to knows what they're doing. And in relation to that, becoming a keychain leader is not less work, it's more work.
Right.
Because you really have to prepare people to take on those responsibilities. Especially if it's something, if they already have the skills and the expertise, that's one thing, but especially if it's youth or parents who haven't, or other adults who haven't volunteered before, sometimes it's let me do it, and then you, excuse me, then you do it with me, and then I'm going to back off and let you do it on your own. Or at least saying, here's the setup, like if we did Super Bowl of Caring, for example, I would outline everything that needed to be done and say, which parts do you want me to do? What do you want to do? And then give it to them. But it definitely involves work.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yes, for sure. Well, if you're okay, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next slide. Maybe.
I see actually Sherry Bingham's got her hand up, but she's self.
Oh, Sherry, go ahead. Sorry.
And then Valerie does as well.
Okay, go ahead.
So Sherry, if you want to unmute, there you go.
Yeah, I didn't think I had mine up. I don't know. Is green? I thought green was up. Is red up?
I don't want to. It just. I think red must be up. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, then that was not. Then I didn't have mine up. Sorry.
Okay. Boo has got his up. So you're unmuted. Go ahead, Boo.
Hi. Hey, I find that we're kind of all over the place with the keychain. It seems like there's many times where I think the leadership wants to let go of the keys, but when you look around, there's nobody going to take the keys. We have lots of really smart, educated people in our congregation, and they run companies, and they have upper management positions, and they walk in the door and it's like they've forgotten everything they know. It's the weirdest thing. It's like, those skills that they use at work are certainly transferable to leadership in the church, but the first thing they ask is, I don't know how to do that. And so I think that's some of the struggle. And then I think it was Deborah that said that one of the things that we do often, at least on my team, and I'm a director for children's ministries, is I have a team of people, and we kind of make decisions together. Now, one thing that happens quite often is I run out of time to meet. And so then I just start doing things myself, which I guess is hoarding the keys, but that's not necessarily intentional. It's just so hard to find time to meet with people anymore, that you wind up not being able to share the keys, or you can half the time I can't find the keys. But it's just a crazy time kind of thing. So I think it depends on the circumstances. I think it depends on the task. We try to get lots of these upper level management kind of people, the people that really like to lead. We try to get those guys together, just strategize with us. But it's really difficult. I don't know why it has to be so hard, but it is.
Right.
One thing I will say, I will add, I have kind of taken a little bit different approach with our kids, because I remember when I was a kid, I was 5th or 6th grade, and my Sunday school teacher was going to be out for a week, and she asked me if I would lead the class. I was scared to death, but I did it. And so as I've been thinking about that now, I've asked my 6th graders some questions about what they want their ministry to look like. You know, do you want to stay in children's, or would you prefer to be in the middle school ministry? And so I've kind of asked them, it won't affect them this year, because there are 6th graders today. But I said, if you keep your 6th grade hat on, if you can think about those 5th graders now, what would you have wanted in 6th grade had we asked you? Do you want to stay in elementary ministry, or would you prefer to be in middle school? And so some of them have been quite surprised that I even asked them. But what I noticed is all of a sudden some of the activities that we're still doing with elementary school, they are showing up for. Whereas what they kind of have been doing up to this point in time is like, it's kind of giving you the impression, this is really not for me. But now that they're being asked, what's your opinion? What do you want? What do you think we should do? They're a little more involved now, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. Well, the other question that I would have too for them is, would they be willing to come back and help with some of the younger ones as they move on to, you know, to their next, the next level, you know, if they, especially the ones that truly enjoyed the activities that they're doing now, you know, even then giving a little bit of a leadership away. Does anybody else have any other comments?
Andrew's got his hand up.
Andrew, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I just took a new call this past September, and from being a church where I had served for 10 years, and a good opportunity to kind of have a reality check about your key style is when you go to leave, how well equipped are the people in that congregation? And that was certainly an important time for me to really reflect as I prepared to leave that call, to think about where were places where I did a good job of equipping people, and where were places where maybe I did not do such a good job of equipping people or creating systems that did not require me to be present for them to function. So that was a helpful time for me to look at my own leadership style and hopefully take some of those lessons into my current call.
Mm-hmm. Nice, thank you. So we've talked about ourselves individually. What about the leadership culture in your church? How would you describe it? Boo, you kind of talked about your own structure and with your children's team. Are there others that have or maybe a pastor? Do we have a pastor online who would be willing to talk about the leadership culture? I know in the first congregation that I served in, it was definitely a key hoarding structure, and it was hard for even the associate pastor and me as the youth director to get any sorts of keys in the congregation. It made ministry really hard, to the point where I learned a lot, but I also got burnt out. And I worry about leaders, if we don't create a culture of keychain leadership in our congregations, will we burn out our staff, and will we burn out our volunteers because of not letting them lead and giving them responsibilities?
Looks like Sherry's got her hand up. Sherry, if you could
Okay.
unmute.
Yes. So I've had different experiences over the past several years. I was at a church where the pastor left and we got an intentional interim. And pretty much when she arrived, she literally took all the facility keys from everybody and limited access to the building, to the office. I was doing Sunday school and adult studies, and I had always gone in, like, you know, I worked full time. I did a lot of my Sunday planning on Saturday. And so I'd go in early Sunday and make copies or whatever I needed. And she took all of that away. And then I left there and went to a larger congregation as a staff person. And they literally, you know, I walked in the door and they handed me keys to just about everything except the pastor's offices. And then after I left there, the congregation I'm at now, I do not have keys to the building, which for me is okay. But everything that I've asked to do or I've suggested that we do, the pastor's like, yeah, let's try it. And the people in the congregation, well, like I said with the pancake dinner, they just jump right in. And it doesn't matter if they've never done it before, they act like they've been doing it for 10 years.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Keychain leaders are, and this is just for us, as we work towards being better keychain leaders, we need to be aware of the keys that we hold. We need to constantly be opening doors and new doors, listening to the new folks that enter, and looking for the folks that enter to train and then give away the keys to entrust them with the work that needs to be done. We also need to be willing to persevere if a person gets stuck and say, no, you can do this, and always, of course, be in touch with them. And Deborah, I think it was you that said it's always a lot of work. It is a lot of work to be a keychain leader. But congregations, Fuller has shown that when the leaders are have these qualities, the members are more involved, and the congregation is doing more things in their community. These are just some of the attributes of a keychain leader, which I think we really talked about. But maturity, it doesn't mean age so much as wisdom, being real, and authentic, being warm and welcoming, knowing your people and what matters to them, entrusting and empowering others. And then keychain leaders take the long view. Sometimes we get stuck in, well, I've got to get this done on my to-do list and this done, and instead of taking the long view of what is the best thing for our ministry, for our youth ministry, or for our congregation. So think back to a time when someone gave you the keys of access to the church. What was significant about that time? Would somebody be willing to share? And I'm looking for hands. Hands up, hands up.
Felicity's hand is up. Go ahead, Felicity.
So I've had actually several great experiences with hands, but one that, or keys being handed over, but one that really, really stuck out in my mind just now was we had a pastor who was leaving our congregation for a new call, and he walked up to me one day and literally handed me the keys to the building and the classrooms and said, I think you should take on youth while the interim is here. And that's kind of how I became a youth director. He helped me kind of walk through what he had been doing, but he said, I trust you completely, and do it how you want to do it. And then when the new pastor gets here, you can reevaluate. But while the interim is here, it's your program. Have fun with it. And so I was super, super nervous. You know, I'd been doing little Sunday school classes before that, and here, you know, plop in my lap, I've got everything. But it really opened my eyes to let me know that this is something that I could do, and I really love it, and I've been doing it ever since.
Awesome. Anyone else? There's a couple of pages before we end. I want to, and we've only got a few more minutes left on the call today.
Rachel, Boo popped her hand up as well.
Sorry. I can't see everybody's hand all at the same time. So, okay, Boo, go for it.
Well, I think there might be a lag too by the time we put our hands up and when you guys see it. One of the things that I think that is really key to the keys is helping people find their sweet spot. I know I would have a background in project management, and so one of the first things that somebody asked me to do at church was to lead VBS, and I thought, okay, that's no big deal. Well, other people think that's just an unbelievably daunting task. It's overwhelming, but for me, it was a piece of cake. So I think part of the success in handing off keys or sharing keys or whatever, or handing over the keys, is that you hand it to somebody that is their sweet spot. And I think when it doesn't work very well is when you hand keys off to somebody that is totally not what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it helps to know their spiritual gifts too. You know,
right,
if you know
right,
their,
right.
Yep, if they're good at it. Yes, yeah, not only career wise. So anyone else? Okay, we'll move on. I just wanted to bring your attention to towards the end of the second chapter, ideas for action. And on 74, at the very bottom, it says conduct a young leader assessment. And I would challenge you to do this, but not only with your teenagers, but also think about just the congregation in general. Maybe just go down a list of young leaders in your church and think about some of the things that you do, and create just a list with all of their names, and think about the gifts and who they are. And then what are some of the things that you can give away to them or ask them to do? What are they good at? Or maybe what do they do? My daughter is a teacher. She was asked to, she's a chorus teacher. She was asked to teach the high school students, but she's already teaching during the week. So she would much prefer and does serve on the worship committee because she gets to do something that she loves to do. So not only what somebody's career is, but think about what they love to do, what they enjoy doing. And this is especially important with people that are new to your congregation, to get to know them and to find out where their interests lie and be able to share the ministry with them. So that young leader assessment is really important. The next thing too is don't let them fail. So make sure you equip them well. Andrew, I think you said that. But training is so important, and sometimes it's just it can be easy, but it affirms them and helps them feel like they can be, or they will be successful. prime example, this past year, we did equipping the Youth Corps leadership team with peer ministry, and we had 2 trainings with them. And then at the actual summit, the youth led the peer ministry activities. We trained them really well. We gave them time to be creative and put their own energy into it and their own ideas and stories into it. And then they were absolutely fantastic. And leaders were surrounding them, just making sure if they needed a little bit of assistance, we were there to help them. But boy, they led peer ministry better than any other adult could do. It was just fantastic. And I think one of the other important things for a keychain leader to do is to always say thank you. Thank you to the volunteers. Thank you to the kids. Just that little affirmation is significant. And many of us need that little pat on the back. So we're going to meet next month, and we're going to discuss the next 2 chapters of the book. But I've got some to-dos for you. And Todd, is there a way to post this maybe somewhere in case people forget? But first of all,
post the homework assignment?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can put that on the page, sure.
Okay, awesome. So here's what I'd like for you to think about is think of young people who've added vitality and to your life personally and to the life of your congregation. And next time we gather, I'd like to hear maybe 2 or 3 stories just about these young people, but then also encourage you in the next month to add those stories to Facebook posts or to newsletters, or if you can do an announcement and lift up a young person and what they're doing in the life of the church or in your life. Bring attention to these young people. The next thing I want you to do is think about the ages that are missing in your congregation and write them down and begin to pray for them. I do believe that a lot of times we say, well, you know what, we're not going to have Vacation Bible School this year because we don't have kids that are in our congregation that are a VBS age. Well, guess what? We have them in our community. So begin to pray for the bare spots. And it might not be young people either. It might be older generations. The next thing is go into the book and really evaluate your leadership style, and then think about how you would like to grow. And then finally, and it goes with that assessment, when you go through that list of young people, if you go through that list of young people, share a key with a younger person, whether it's helping you set up, whether it's leading the discussion on a topic, whether it's leading the closing prayer, but of a Sunday school session or whatever it might be. Share a key with a young person this month. And I think I've got 12 o'clock on the dot. So I will close this with prayer. And if any of you would like to hang on and talk further, I'm happy to do that. Dear God, thank you so much for our time together as we learn about growing young and helping our congregations be more vital. We ask for your wisdom and direction in our congregations, in our ministries, and in us. Thank you for this day. Be with our country and with the people that need healing and that will need to be healed with the virus. Take care of us, nurture us, and love us. In your son's name we pray. Amen. All right.